The agricultural world is erupting into chaos, with farmers in France and the UK uniting in a cross-channel revolt that threatens to shake governments to their cores. In France, tractors are ready to block highways, bridges, and even government offices as furious agricultural workers prepare Act 2 of their protests against a looming EU trade deal with South America. At the same time, in Britain, thousands of farmers are preparing to storm Westminster to fight Labour's controversial inheritance tax reforms. Both uprisings stem from deep-rooted frustrations and fears that political leaders are ignoring the struggles of rural communities. Could this spark a broader European movement? The countdown to chaos has begun, and we're here to unravel the scandal, layer by dramatic layer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned as this story unfolds, because you won't want to miss a single explosive detail. Across France, farmers are bracing themselves for another showdown with President Emmanuel Macron's government. Earlier this year, Paris was brought to its knees by a tractor blockade that nearly starved the capital. Now, the same groups are rallying under unions like FNSEA and Young Farmers to push back against a trade deal between the European Union and the Mercosur bloc, comprising Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia. The deal has sparked outrage because it would allow a flood of cheap agricultural imports into Europe, threatening local farmers' livelihoods. French farmers argue that South American producers are held to much lower environmental and ethical standards, creating unfair competition. Arnaud Rousseau, the leader of FNSEA, called the deal a bitter cherry on the cake of an already dire situation for farmers. "This isn't just about a trade deal," Rousseau declared. "This is about the survival of European farming." Rain-hit harvests, livestock diseases, and delays in promised reforms have already left French farmers struggling. Adding the Mercosur deal to the mix has turned simmering frustration into outright rage. Protesters plan to target state buildings and major roundabouts across the country, but Rousseau insists their goal isn't to inconvenience everyday citizens. However, that sentiment didn't stop Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau from issuing a stern warning. Any lasting blockades on major roads will face zero tolerance. Despite this, farmers like Armel Freiture, a dairy producer near Paris, are determined to make their voices heard. "We have no choice," Freiture said. "Our demands from January have gone unanswered. The government needs to understand that enough is enough." Meanwhile, in the UK, the situation is no less dramatic. Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party is facing a political firestorm after unveiling plans to overhaul inheritance tax laws for farms. Under the proposed changes, farms valued over £1 million would no longer receive full inheritance tax relief, sparking fury among rural communities. The National Farmers Union, NFU, has taken the lead in organising opposition, with 1,800 members scheduled to meet MPs at Westminster to express their anger. But the real spectacle will unfold outside, where an estimated 40,000 farmers plan to flood the streets with tractors, slurry tankers, and banners accusing Labour of betraying rural Britain. The weekend already saw a preview of the unrest at the Welsh Labour conference in Llandudno. As Starmer addressed party members inside, protesters lined the streets outside, waving placards that read "Blood on Labour's hands" and staging a symbolic blockade with agricultural vehicles. Labour insists that the tax reforms are targeted at wealthier landowners and that small family farms will remain unaffected. However, farmers are unconvinced. One demonstrator outside Llandudno argued, "This isn't about being rich, it's about survival. These policies will destroy family farms that have been passed down for generations." The stakes are high for Starmer, who must balance urban and rural voters ahead of the next election. But with tensions boiling over, Labour risks alienating a critical segment of the electorate. In both France and the UK, these uprisings are symptoms of a deeper crisis. Farmers feel abandoned by governments they perceive as prioritising urban and international interests over rural communities. From unfair trade policies to excessive regulations and now inheritance tax changes, the grievances are piling up. This isn't just a story about two isolated protests, it's about a growing sense of disillusionment among agricultural workers across Europe. French and British farmers have different immediate goals, but their frustration comes from the same place, a feeling that their concerns are being ignored in favour of political expediency. Adding fuel to the fire are fears about the broader economic implications of these policies. Experts warn that destabilizing the agricultural sector could have ripple effects on food prices, supply chains, and even political alliances. Macron has vowed to oppose the Mercosur trade deal, but critics accuse him of pandering to farmers without offering real solutions. Meanwhile, Starmer's team is scrambling to contain the fallout from the inheritance tax debacle. As the protests escalate, it's clear that both leaders are in for a turbulent few weeks. Macron faces the prospect of a nationwide shutdown if farmers block major transportation routes, while Starmer must contend with the optics of rural Britain marching on Westminster. But the chaos doesn't end with farmers. Starmer is also under fire for his proposed plan to tackle illegal immigration, which critics have slammed as both naive and ineffective. Former Conservative MP Michael Brown called the strategy laughable, pointing out that countries like Turkey are unlikely to cooperate with Labour's proposed funding arrangements. And then there's the looming spectre of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Analysts warn that Trump's protectionist trade policies could deliver a £20 billion blow to the UK economy by 2029, further complicating an already fragile economic landscape. With crises mounting on multiple fronts, the coming days could prove pivotal for both Macron and Starmer. Will they manage to quell the uprisings in their countries, or will the farmers' fury snowball into a broader European revolt? Starmer's troubles don't end with farmers. His newly unveiled strategy to address illegal immigration is drawing sharp criticism. Former Conservative MP Michael Brown has dismissed Starmer's plan to fund border security in countries like Turkey and Vietnam as not a chance in hell of working. The proposal, aimed at reducing illegal crossings into the UK, is part of Labour's broader push to combat people smuggling. However, critics argue that the plan is unrealistic, especially given Turkey's current stance on migrants. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's return to the political stage is casting a shadow over Britain's economic future. Analysts predict that Trump's hardline trade policies could cost the UK as much as £20 billion by 2029, further exacerbating an already tense political environment. This isn't just about tractors or tax policies. It's about the rural heartlands of Europe standing up against governments they feel have abandoned them. Macron and Starmer are both at a crossroads, facing massive public backlash and the risk of losing critical political support. Will they address the root causes of these crises, or will they continue to fan the flames of discontent? With French farmers gearing up for Act 2 and British farmers poised to flood Westminster, the next 48 hours could redefine the political landscape on both sides of the Channel. One thing is certain, this scandal is far from over. Stay tuned for the latest updates as we continue to uncover the dramatic twists and turns in this unfolding saga. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more political updates.